So yeah, my name is Shiva Mao. I'm you see the moderator here. So next session will be a panel. So basically we have four, you can see we have four excellent panelists here with a very diverse experience when working in different areas, but all related to connected health and AI. So the theme of this panel is actually, that's the assignment I got from the general chair. So basically it's AI for connected health. Um, so uh, let me just give you a few minutes background, then the next following that, so each panelist will make their presentation, talking about their related work, their vision, and then after that, all the panelists will go on stage and will open the floor for free discussion and question and answers. Okay, so that's about the format. So yeah, well, this field is quite unique, right? So one thing is that there are a lot of outdated technology still there, right? So and as mentioned in the keynote in the morning, there's 30% of administrative management operation folks, but there's a lot of things you need to improve. We all have this kind of experience. Like my experience, I stayed in the emergency room for maybe 2 hours. Then when eventually the doctors come to me, I don't feel the pain. I can go home. Yes. And sorry. And another thing is like I'm a wireless person, so I basically I'm more interested in the equipment hardware side. So you can see there's a lot of wires, cables. When I was in graduate school, there was a workshop called "Get Rid of Those Malicious Noodle," because there's so many wires and it's very messy. Why not using wireless technology, right? And for this diagnosing, like you have those photos, but still you need a lot of experience, well-trained doctors to look at it using their naked eye. Okay, and recognize this poor guy. So that was a sleep study I did for apnea. Okay, I was sent to a hospital, sleep one night with all the sensors hooked on me, plugged into the wall, and there was a camera watching me whole night. A nurse was there. So the issue is that I don't sleep normally in such a setting. So the data collected probably is all wrong, right? So later on, my student, he's sitting there. So we develop a mobile app. So let me see if I can play the. Yeah, so basically we use ultrasound from your smartphone. You can collect all the respiration data. Maybe you can also record the sound, the breathing audio. Then you can analyze this data. You can sleep in your own bed, then get a very, good data, and do a better diagnosis. And with the development of this AI, machine learning, GPU, then you don't need to look at these pictures. Maybe AI can help you to get much better predictions, diagnosis. And on the right-hand side, that was a news last summer. There was the first called the transcontinental remote surgery. The surgeon was in Rome at an international conference, while the poor patient was in Beijing. So then they use this 5G technology, ultra low latency, and fiber optical connections. They can do this surgery. Okay, yeah, if I remember correctly, it's a prostate cancer or something. Yeah, so these are the examples. Like there's a lot of space for improvement with our technologies. Okay, from different areas, sensing, robotics, and communications. Yeah, and as mentioned in the yesterday's keynote, generative AI. So we are all using AI, but it's very difficult to collect data. Okay, collect good data. Then generative AI can help you to synthesize data, and the synthesized data has equal the good quality as the real data collected from field, that will save you a lot of efforts and time, labor. So you can use this synthesized data to train your model. So this is from the SCH program solicitation. So you see all the different topics, different enabling technologies. So the second, I think, unique feature in this area is that it is truly interdisciplinary. So people from different backgrounds, they can work together to get good solutions. Okay. And a third feature in my mind is not in slide is there's a human factor, very strong human factor. You need to work with people, patients. So you need to know how to recruit patients for your experiment, for your study. And you like I'm a wireless engineer, so we conducted experiment on students on ourselves. I'm sure the result may be different from, should be different from when you recruit new patient, recruit the real patients and conduct experiment on real patients. So there's a strong human factor there. And also we need to be careful about regulations, policies, IRB approval. There's a lot of things. So we have 4 outstanding panelists with very different background, so they can share with us their experience and vision from different perspectives. So then the first panelist is Professor Yulia Gel. She's a statistician, and she's also a professor with Virginia Tech, but she has also a lot of experience with NSF, in particular running this SCH program. And her work is mostly like in mathematics and statistical foundations of data science. Okay, and she has published extensively at top-tier conferences and numerous awards. And our second panelist is Fred Jiang. He's an associate professor from Columbia University, so in Manhattan. So, and he's chair of the Smart City Center at the Data Science Institute at Columbia. And his research is intersection of systems and data. So he worked a lot on embedded systems and their applications in mobile wearable computing, etc., IoT, cyber-physical, human systems, etc. And he has a long list of best paper, best demo awards from top-tier conferences. And also he's the vice chair of this ACM CHASE Energy, and is on the editorial board of many other like ACM journals. And he's involved in conferences like CHASE. He was one of the TPC co-chair of CHASE 2020, if I remember. Our third panelist is Professor Casimir Kolkovsky. He's a Board of Governors professor of computer science at Rutgers. You can see he's a fellow of AAAI, AAAS, IEEE. So it's a long list. And his research is mostly on pattern recognition and AI biomedics. And he has a special interest in history of this field, how the field evolves over the years. You can see he's the organizer of the first AI in medicine workshop back in 1975. So I was only 4 years old back then, so very futuristic. And he also developed the first, many firsts, the first causal associational network model of diseases, the first medical expert system. It's I will not read those them, but I'm really interested to. So he will share that to his presentation, where he will share with us his experience. Last but not the least, we have Professor Wenjing Lo from Virginia Tech. She's an English endowed professor of computer science and a fellow of ACM at IEEE. And her research work is mostly cybersecurity, privacy, and with application to machine learning and network system, etc. And she won also, as the previous 3 panelists, she also won numerous awards. To name a few, like Infocom Test of Time Award, and also Infocom Achievement Award. Yeah, so those are highly prestigious awards. And she's running this CNS, that is a top security conference, and also Infocom as a steering committee chair, vice chair. And also, like Professor Jiao, she also served as NSF program director in the SAIS and CNS, and she runs those like core programs. And also, yeah, I don't know if any of you, but I benefit a lot from her work, her funded projects, and yeah, so really appreciate that. So. So next, this is a list of topics. But I think we don't need to worry about that. So because all this will be covered by the presentations of each panelist. So then I think then we'll take turns to present their work and their vision. Then after that, we'll all go on stage and we'll open the floor for discussion and question and answers. Okay, thank you. So, Professor Jiao, you are the next.
Thank you. So, it was hard actually to try to summarize my vision in very few slides, but I'll try to be brief and provide some directions that I'm very excited about in conjunction with AI in healthcare. So one thing is that I'll try, although I'm no longer at NSF, but I'll do a little bit of marketing. So last year, NSF has started a new program, which is also between NSF and NIH, but it's also added another partner, which is Food and Drug Administration, FDA. So it's kind of unique in the sense it's tri-agency program. And it focuses on foundations for digital twins. And I need to say that although I was at NSF at that time, and I was one of the cognizant officers for that, I got very much interested in particular aspects of mathematics and statistics for digital twins in healthcare and biomedical sciences. So a little bit, why digital twins and synthetic data, or better to say, how FDA calls synthetic humans. So if you have a clinical trial, the regular clinical trial, yes, so in order to register a device, you need to, it takes a lot of time, okay, and a lot of money, which largely precludes participation of many startups and, you know, early on ideas into this process. But if we, instead of using actual humans, will have synthetic humans, and if we run in silico trials, we can potentially really get a breakthrough, revolutionize how we can register biomedical devices. So that was the ultimate idea of FDA. And it turns out that FDA actually has run a study trying to compare in silico trials with synthetic data and actual clinical trials based on what Siemens has done for some of the biomedical equipment imaging. Turns out that FDA was able to reach the same conclusions in 3 months. So, if I haven't excited you yet, so let's look at what is digital twins. Digital twins are not synthetic humans. This has 2 parts: actual humans, okay, and digital twins. And then there's a bidirectional connection between them. So it means that if I have a digital copy, virtual copy of a patient, we can send information from patient to his or her virtual copy and say, predict what will happen with a patient heart. Then we'll send this information back to the human, and I'll update what will happen with human. We'll have some intervention, and then we'll send the new information back to digital twins. So that is one of the key peculiarities of digital twins ideas comparing to everything that has been done before. And there are very many open problems. This is new ideas, and there are many, many open problems there. Since I'm in math and statistics, I'm interested in trying to understand how we can validate, verify, and say quantify uncertainty, or what is called VVUQ. So I'm working with my colleagues, on some of them are here in this room, on how we can bring topology for VVUQ of digital twins and synthetic humans. So if you think, what is topology? Topology is a subject, mathematical subject that studies shape, okay? So here you see a small fragment of the circus from very famous French impressionist Georges Seurat from Musée d'Orsay in Paris. So if you look at this smaller part, the fragment, you'll see just dots, many colored dots, okay? Nothing. But if you stand far enough from the picture, and then your eye automatically connects some dots based on color, on proximity, on shape, then you'll see that it's a person. So topological tools, and particularly tools of topological data analysis and persistent homology, allows us to grasp shapes in the data based on similarity of color, signal, proximity, and so on. And as a result, we can have a more systematic multi-scale VVUQ for digital twins and synthetic humans. So we can, for example, decide if we have a tooth with different resolutions, we can decide which resolution we shall take. Do we really match what we expect to match given the particular learning objects? So that is what I'm working on nowadays in terms of digital twins in dentistry. And we are interested in expanding that further and trying to understand how similar those digital twins across other tissues, okay? So can we actually move the methodology that we have developed for virtual copy of a tooth to a virtual copy of a bone, okay? Because maybe mathematically we have a similar thing, and we can use pre-training tools or transfer learning, what we call it in machine learning, yes? So how to do that? And again, so we can use some of the tools from geometric and topological analysis to use pre-training mechanisms and transfer the knowledge across different objects and tasks. Another topic that I find very exciting, and this is the topic that least developed nowadays, is human digital twin interaction. So if we look at National Academy of Science report on digital twins, that is chapter 7, and it's the least known, okay? So people don't know, in the end, when you have a digital twin of a human being, you need to decide, or doctor needs to decide what kind of intervention to select, okay? So this human in the loop is essential part, is a critical part, and least understood. So that requires development of novel methodologies such as multi-agent reinforcement learning and Markov decision processes, trying to incorporate human in the loop in the best possible ways. And finally, the other direction that I find very exciting is trying to use multimodal knowledge graphs for representing various types of available information as a graph abstraction, and then try to incorporate this graph abstraction both into VVUQ of digital twins and synthetic humans, and enhancing existing digital twins with this new knowledge that you can distill from your knowledge graph, and you are not capable to get this knowledge from any other information. And the reasons that knowledge graphs can provide you some links and interactions that you have not even thought about that before. And finally, what is the best way to learn this multimodal knowledge graph abstraction? So there are some exciting directions here, both in terms of math, stat, and ML, including hypergraph learning and simplicial neural networks, and the related dual properties with tensor data analysis. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's great that CHASE this year is in Manhattan. So it's literally 20 minutes away from my office. So welcome all to my city. So my lab at Columbia has been working on embedding intelligence into resource-constrained platforms. So these could be earbuds, could be glasses, could be a treadmill, or it could be the HVAC systems in a building. So my lab wasn't supposed to be a health lab or a medical-focused lab. But somehow, when I step back and look at the projects that my lab has been working on over the years, it looks like we have half, if not even more, projects that are centered on health. And thinking back, I think what happened was we have clinicians or professionals from the medical domain who came to us and asked us to help them to solve their problems. And when we look deeper into these concrete problems, we realized that there are, in fact, research questions that we as computer scientists or as electrical engineers can tackle and can invent. So it became a very fruitful collaboration between our lab and these domain experts. So now we have lots of projects over the years. This is representing maybe half of the different projects in my lab over the years. I think it's also a very nice, I think this is a reflection of this community as well, right? We are trying to bring technology together with health, with medical domain experts, and be able to solve real-world problems. So today, I want to use this opportunity to briefly talk about a couple of our lab's projects, also showing this progression from somewhat simple signal processing to inventing kind of simple systems with simple machine learning to a little bit more complicated systems with embedding AI or embodying AI into these embedded systems. So early on, when we started the lab, we actually worked on this project called the Privacy-Preserving Pillbox. This was published in CHASE 2018. And it started with a clinician, I think, who is working on epilepsy at the time, who came to us and asked us, we have patients who have to take a regimen of medication, but they do not really do that because they are afraid that their data is being taken by these companies, providers. So they want us to provide something that is privacy preserving. So through this process, we actually came up with a couple of interesting things. One is a more reliable optical sensor technology that allows the pillbox to quickly determine how many pills is in each of the boxes. The other one is using essentially avoiding using the cloud. Everything is stored locally between the pillbox and the user's phone, and it's synchronized with the pillbox and then transferred to the medical provider. So I think it's one of our lab's very early medical-related projects, just to show that this is one example of a clinician come to us, and we together came up with a solution. Now, moving forward several years, this is a project where a neonatal nurse came to our lab and told us about a problem that they have, which is oftentimes it's very important for for newborn babies to have skin-to-skin contact with their mothers. It in fact helps the development of these babies. However, this is very difficult to achieve. It requires oftentimes these very gnarly wires that's been dangling around, and the skins of these babies are very sensitive. So looking at this problem, we start to think about different ways that our kind of technology can be used. And we came up with this idea of using computational fabrics or conductive fabrics, right? These are very soft fabrics that conduct signals. And we came up with a very, I would say, very interesting solution where the mother can wear a necklace type of object, and it has this conductive fabric on both sides of the necklace. And when the mother is holding the newborn baby to her chest, the two sides of the conductive of this pendant forms a loop that goes through both the mother's side and also the baby's side's heart, right? So the signal goes through it. So we essentially get the combination of the ECG signals from both the mother and the baby. The challenge here is that, first of all, it is a mixture of two signals, where the mother's ECG, the heart sort of ECG signal, is much stronger than the baby's, right? So the noise signal ratio here is quite challenging. The other one is movements, right? If there's any movements, it introduces a lot of noises. So here we develop a couple of different ways to essentially doing signal conditioning using adaptive filtering as well as diffusion-based denoising. At the end of the day, we're able to clinically show that our device makes it very comfortable, and we're able to monitor the skin-to-skin contact time as well as the baby's biometrics. So moving on to another project that's around the same time frame. This is where, I guess this is when large language models is becoming quite pervasive, and everyone is thinking about how to use LLM in different domains, right? And we saw a couple of these PaLM or a couple of these projects that's trying to leverage large language models for turn-by-turn diagnostics. So one issue with that we observed is that, so let me first start by saying why we decided to call this project Dr. House. So I came up with this name because our project is sort of, the philosophy is similar to, well, actually, who have heard of this TV show called Dr. House? Just so that I don't know if I need to introduce this show first. Okay, so in this show, we have this fictional character, House, who essentially says, I do not believe what patients say. We should rely our diagnosis essentially only on objective data, such as blood tests and whatnot. So sort of similar to Dr. House's philosophy, our system is also saying that we cannot completely trust what the turn-by-turn dialogue between the patients, and we should leverage other kind of data, such as sensor data. So in this project, we are incorporating both historical and live sensor data in the diagnostic process. And in addition to be able to converse with the patient, the system can also prescribe lab tests, such as blood tests or urine tests. Another thing that we added to this system is the ability to incorporate up-to-date data. So there is a medical database called UpToDate, and we're able to incorporate that using our reg. All right, so kind of moving away from physical health, we are also very interested in mental health. This is, I guess, started because one of my students who presented this paper yesterday has collaborators who are therapists. And it is certainly a big issue of people able to access quality mental health care. So we are asking the question, right? We have all these smart home devices, such as the Alexa and the Google Home. And can we use that as a home therapist? And in fact, you can if you simply ask, say, ChatGPT with a prompt such as, pretend you are a therapist and converse with me, right? So if you do that, you will in fact get a fairly pleasant conversation with your GPT. However, that conversation is not necessarily clinically the best conversation you should have. So, GPT has this tendency to agree with you, and oftentimes, so its objective is somewhat misaligned from what we really want in terms of psychotherapy session. So in this work, we worked with a lot of real therapists to train a model, a system, a recommender system that also utilizes a bunch of different other subsystems to be able to perform interventions such as motivational interviewing and cognitive behavior therapy. So I think this is one example of sort of how we are trying to utilize large language models with mental health care. One thing that we didn't quite dive in yesterday was the fact that oftentimes people are not responsive to a conversation, right? Especially if you're suffering from mental health issues. I can try to start a conversation with you, but you might not respond. So in this case, we decided to leverage smart home sensors. So think about the different sensors in your home that can potentially be used to assist in the in this process. We have, for example, used a Roomba that can localize where the persons are, go to the user, and then figure out things like, is this person sitting still for extended period of time? Is there change in his facial expression? Is this person drinking or smoking? Which are all very important cues for mental health care. All right, so with that, I'm going to kind of jump to another recent project. So previously, we talked about how we're leveraging smart home devices in a lot of our projects. Extending that, we are seeing more of these smart devices in our homes, right? I think a lot of us are using, have Roombas at home. The other device that our lab is actively researching on are these micro aerial vehicles, so these small, tiny drones. And we have a vision that these drones will become pervasive, and these drones combined with existing home devices can be used for various types of home assistance, including health applications. So we developed a prototype system that we're calling FlexiFly. This system really has two parts. One is on the hardware side of things. So we have this custom drone that allows the drone to seamlessly exchange sensors or actuators. So giving a task, the drone can autonomously land itself, grab the sensor that's most relevant to the task, and fly out to execute the task. Come back, switch the sensor, and execute a different task. On the software side of things, we are using large language models and vision language models to perform a couple of things. One is comprehending the task at hand. So the user can use natural language to issue a task, such as alert my physician if my father falls down, or things like detect if there's an intruder, or finding the warmest place to sit, right? So these are natural language based tasks, and we can use LLM to understand the intent and use that to translate that intent into drone or machine executable commands. And then it's carried out, and this is executed by the underlying platform, FlexiFly. So I think that's pretty much the various projects that I want to describe now. I want to end by saying that I think there's a tremendous potential by embedding and embody AI into these everyday devices and use that for health applications. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Very happy to be here with you. And now for something somewhat different. I'm the oldest person on this panel, And I have 60 years worth of experience to share with you in, let's see, where's the slides? Since we, page, okay. Good. So when did AI start? The moment humans started writing. We were able to communicate and connect in a way across time and across space. And so both in East and West, with, of course, COVID being close to our memory, in the West, the work by Hippocrates on the epidemics when the plague hit Athens and eventually killed Pericles is an extremely important precedent for understanding the clinical course of disease. Asclepius, with his snake there, shows the mystic background of treating people right. And the surgery with the Egyptian doctor in the middle there shows that this had been going along even before the Greeks, who learned a lot from the Egyptians on for not just surgery, but also treatment. And in the East, you have the Ayurveda, Indian tradition of holistic medicine, and also the Chinese traditional medicine likewise. And at the bottom, you have a bunch of symbols. The first AI in medicine workshop that we organized, as it turns out, at Rutgers in 1975, jumping to today's challenges of deep learning. And I edited a book that was finished in 2021, showing the transition between the ancient and the modern through the stories of various people that have worked in our field. If you want to think about connections for AI across, or in this image around the biomedical healthcare spectrum, or in this sense a kaleidoscope, you can have different labels for different activities which break down in a conventional way into research, investigations, experimentations, followed by patient care, where we actually try to do something useful for patients, keep them alive as long as they can in reasonable condition. And finally, the sort of stuff that we as professors always enjoy doing, which is sharing all of this through education. Now, it turns out that there are lots of modern precursors on computer uses in medicine, in nursing, and healthcare in general, which started out mostly in the 1950s and 1960s with statistical and pattern recognition models for clinical reasoning and mathematical models, there we go back, modeling and simulation, all of which were interesting precursors, prototype systems throughout the world. You can see at the bottom an IEEE edition of the proceedings back in 1961, which was one thing that I learned a lot from. In the middle, well, the top above it, Dr. Robert Ledley, who down at in Washington, Georgetown University, did some very pioneering work on the application of Bayesian models for reasoning, which has, as you know, become generalized nowadays and used in a variety of simplified and more sophisticated ways for trying to model human decision-making. And in the middle, there's Dr. Lindbergh, Donald Lindbergh, who passed away just a few years ago, but who was absolutely instrumental in pushing AI as part of the federal work in the National Library of Medicine. And of course, you have people from around the world, François Grémy in France, people in England, in continental Europe, and including the Soviet Union, did all kinds of interesting preliminary stuff, but with extremely primitive computers and extremely limited capabilities in those days. I myself was a student at Yale University, where I had the good fortune of having an advisor who was a very distinguished physicist, a student of de Broglie and Heisenberg, Satoshi Watanabe. He was the author of a book called Knowing and Guessing, which, as the title suggests, points out that what we do in both pattern recognition and later on in our thinking about it and developing cognitive models is a large part guessing. And the question is, how on earth do we manage to reconcile what we think we know with reasonable certainty and what is, in terms of the theme of this conference, connectivity, in other words, shared with other people knowledge? How on earth do we manage to tie that into the perceptive information that we get when we try to solve a particular problem, and with all the instrumentations that we have? I did my dissertation on what is known as subspace methods in statistics, but also you can apply atomic logic for it. And I completed my PhD at the University of Hawaii with Watanabe, where he moved there to be together with his wife. And by one of those lucky chances in life, I met my wife in Hawaii. Couldn't have been better. My thesis was summarized in an article in the IEEE Transactions on System Science and Cybernetics in 1970. It was based on 10,000 cases, which was big data back then, with thyroid diagnosis problems, and collected by the only thyroidologist or specialist in Hawaii at the time. So they needed to do screening. He was a very rare specialist, one person for all of the islands. Screening is in some sense what I want to emphasize as the most important way in which we can apply AI to pretty much any problem requiring decision-making or requiring interpretation. And I was lucky enough to make it to Rutgers University as my first academic position, which I have kept until now. So this is 55 years. We had great success by the luck of having Saul Amarill, who is at the top there, who was a head of the theory department for AI at Sarnoff Center of RCA in Princeton. And he realized that because of the first AI winter was coming, he anticipated it. He decided he wanted to become head of the department at a newly formed college called Livingston College at Rutgers, and wanted to get federal grants to push his research. And as a result of that, I got hired to become a professor there. And he had great influence by being friends with Herbert Simon, as you know, one of the fathers of AI, Edward Feigenbaum, who's there. And I was lucky to be able to be in a position to organize the very first AI in medicine workshop that's ever been done. In 1975, Amarill, as I said, summarized here. His initiatives was to not just start our graduate program, expanded the faculty, which got my hiring there. But I was lucky to have a very good graduate student by the name of Sholem Weiss, who helped me develop what was the first medical AI consultation system. Because what I learned in Hawaii was the statistical methods and the subspace methods were fine for scientific presentations, but doctors didn't trust them. No one knows how to figure out what on earth those probabilities or estimates of error rates are all about that you juggle. So if you can explain things, and which we did very well, thanks to this development of collaboration with Dr. Aaron Safire here in New York at Mount Sinai School of Medicine, who has developed a fantastic guy, a doctor, a real Renaissance person who developed the ophthalmatron as an instrument that allowed you to do automatic retinoscopy, the very first in the world. Weiss and I developed the causal model, then developed the rule-based models, which were, you could basically turn the causal model into a rule-based model easily. And we've published a couple of books there that have had a reasonable amount of effect and global impact by treating infectious eye diseases in Egypt and the Sahel with collaboration with Dr. Dawson at UCSF. All of this led me to extend the combination of knowledge-based systems with statistical systems with problems of medical imaging, which we dealt with starting in the 1980s, working with Dr. Ruben Mesrich, the father of the well-known novelist. And We did all sorts of interesting genomic medicine experiments, including I had the good fortune of collaborating with the famous mathematician Israel Gelfand on doing all kinds of interesting genomic medicine models. And now with clinical physicians incorporating expert judgment in systems to support statistical epidemiological models. We, of course, were hardly the only people working on this once things started getting interesting in the mid-70s, early 80s. Stanford, we had a big collaboration with them with the SumXAIM systems. They developed rule-based systems which were absolutely the central of pushing AI to its expansion in the 1980s, only to find later that, of course, they don't scale up as well as we had all hoped. So all of these preliminary works, including present illness program at MIT and Tufts and the internist system at Pittsburgh, I summarized them in an article in the Yearbook of Medical Informatics in 2019. And we've seen with great interest all the reported successes of deep learning for medical image analysis and pattern recognition in all kinds of specialties. The slide from a good friend from Spain, Victor Maojo, that I work with. And there have been lots of popular books and articles, like this one by Eric Topol in San Diego, about how you can try to use AI to make healthcare human again. Because, again, just statistics is very nice. It gives you an epidemiological sense of what's going on, but it doesn't focus on the individual. That's the big problem. That's why personalized medical treatment, while we've spoken about a lot, is actually not really all that easy or potentially not possible. There was lots of outlandish expectations of AI in medicine versus the reality, where our wonderful deep learning methods are fragile, unexplainable, and frequently irreproducible. That's a problem, right? It depends what data you are learning from. And when you're learning from the entire web, what you have is weird different ways in which our wonderful skyscrapers of transformers establish wonderful excerpts that are composed or synthesized in ways that are apparently miraculously sensible most of the time, luckily. And a good friend at Harvard, Zach Kohane, who's become the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, and and his friend and my friend Peter Solovich at MIT wrote an interesting article in the New England Journal of Medicine AI section called "Large Language Models Seem Miraculous, but Science Abhors Miracles," which is precisely a very critical point of view, which says that he urges great caution in adopting the methods in healthcare, mainly because the lack of understanding how they accomplish the miraculous seeming things that they're able to do. And he points out an interesting angle that hasn't been emphasized too much because it's commercially somewhat killer. Without coherent and insightful explanation of how diverse capabilities of LLMs emerge, he says that a lot of data compression goes on, as we know, when we do in transformers. And that can help explain why models hallucinate, or what I prefer is the word confabulate. They make up stories, right? Just like us, we make up stories for everything. So because they are not memorizing the inputs, rather they're doing some very clever transformations. But a lot of them require compression. And so the results may be very plausible from the training data, but they're not necessarily true. There's an interesting article on a review of pandemic apps, which showed that none of them were useful. And we know, as both theoreticians and practitioners of the use of statistical methods, that sampling of training data for machine learning from clinical data is always biased, like pretty much everything. It's biased by current limitations in biomedical knowledge, which is changing very rapidly. Determining accuracy criteria is not trivial. It's done very badly, and it's a major problem. It can get you all kinds of interesting theoretical results, but not easy to apply in practice. Most of us would feel very nervous. We saw the interesting example of the surgery from Rome and in Beijing. I'm very curious to find out more details because, frankly, I wouldn't want to be the patient in Beijing with that one. Anyway, everything we deal with in medicine and pretty much everything else are conventional approximations when we make them out to be knowledge. They depend on human conventions of language and in the way we have things represented in texts and online nowadays mostly. So while progress has been made technologically in all kinds of wonderful clinical instruments, drugs, vaccines, and everything else, the vaccination results are truly miraculous. So is drug design nowadays. It's been revolutionized by machine learning and AI. But the big but is applying it to treatment of specific patients. That is something that most people don't want to talk about, or they talk about it in a vague way and say personalization is our goal. Well, sure enough, it is our goal. And things are going to get even more exciting because really the Internet of Things is an Internet of people and things. And what you need to do is develop what arose in this field, the field of the notion of cross-validation, which is done at the data level in terms of juggling, cutting, and splicing different ways in which you can perturb data and see, does it make a difference in the conclusions? Does it make a difference in the actions that you're going to take? That's the key bottom line for both experimentation and especially for treatment of ill patients. So you really want something that could be called semantic cross-validation, which we don't know how to do. That's a big challenge that we're all facing. So then there's the ethical issue. As individuals embodied, we have responsibility for our actions. Everything that's in an AI, no responsibility for anything, or it's highly diffused and no one knows who has responsibility. So essentially, since it's not a living being, you can't apply liability, you can't get explanations from them. You cannot ethically or legally automate it. And yet, that's not being discussed nearly as much as it ought to be. Most of us kind of know this intuitively. Some people, ethicists, discuss it, but it's the big elephant in the room in terms of applying it to ourselves if we're sick and we want to be treated automatically. And the answer is with great care. Okay. Because basically you need someone to take responsibility for what happens if something goes wrong. If it goes right, everyone's happy. But if it goes wrong, it's a problem. Unless you're very cynical, like Pascal, you've heard of Pascal's wager. Patient comes to a doctor and I'm dying. The doctor says, well, I'm afraid chances are that you will. If the doctor's wrong, then whatever poultice in the 17th century that Pascal gave them, that was a miracle cure. If a patient dies, well, the relatives say, the doctors knew darn well that the poor patient was going to die. Very cynical, traditional way of applying things. Everything is biased, so how do you minimize it? You need consciousness with responsibility, which entails much better models of memory and what we could call desirable behavior on the part of healers, healthcare people, perceptive, socially empathetic, evidence-based medical and nursing practices. In other words, we have to go back to Hippocrates and try to figure out what is the new simplified version of do no harm as your first priority in medical care. And that's not easy. And the interesting picture there by the famous philosopher John Searle, the mystery of consciousness has the all-seeing eye. In other words, the synthesis of knowledge that we're supposed to apply when doing things is simplified by the synthesis, which is not what is actually happening in reality. So it's a big challenge. And how does it apply to implement, so to speak, the Hippocratic Oath and the more general form of doing unto others what you would have done unto you, which is the ultimate type of connectivity, when we truly take responsibility for other people in giving them the best advice that we can possibly give. And from a scientific point of view, Scientific American came up with this popular phrase that tells us, what about our immune system? This is dramatic, right? And here at Columbia, since we're in New York, Columbia University has a very clever guy called Eric Kandel. You may have heard his speak, talking about how different truths can be seen through artistic as well as scientific ways of experimenting. And over at Berkeley, you have, in that book called The Neural Mind, you see there, George Lakoff and his collaborators showing how we need models of metaphor in thinking, because all of us do this. And we should go back to one of our precursors in cybernetics, coiner of the term, Norbert Wiener, the person who formalized the models of feedback in pretty much everything. And this leads to the main challenge, which I mentioned, personalizing medical evidence from different reference group similarities. Who chooses it? Who judges the adequacy? And the final conclusion then is increasing personalized precision medicine with AI is realistic with ethical, humane design and supervision. Trouble is, we don't quite know how to do that. And it's a very deep problem. So completely personalized and automated healthcare, neither feasible nor ethical. However, AI for biomedical research is an incredible, almost miracle that we can work on. Why? Because we have human experts who are going to hopefully still continue to judge whether or not the results of research make sense or not by trying to reproduce it. So experimental design is at the basis of everything that we do. We have to test and retest as people who are inventors, who are scientists, as well as technologists, always have done. And you get success by figuring out all the wonderful ways in which the kaleidoscopic results of our current deep learning can somehow be traced with all kinds of special individual cases in great detail and shown to, on the whole, be valuable for people. Well, does it make sense? Thank you.
All right, great. So thank you, and thanks for having me here. So this is indeed a very diverse panel. So I'm a security person, so I'd like to talk about the security and privacy challenges in a smart and connected house, particularly the privacy challenges. So I think I don't need to talk about this more, right? So Shivan already mentioned, everybody mentioned, so we have seen huge success in machine learning in many different application domains, particularly in healthcare, right? So just see who won the Nobel Prize last year, right? So, but one thing I want to mention is that this huge success is largely based on the centralized learning. That basically means, you know, there's the participants need to share the data with a training center, right? So you need to basically send the data where they collected the data, and then they do the centralized training. So this centralized training, this highly centralized data centralization, computation centralization actually raise significant privacy concerns, right? So it's a single point of failure, and also this large amount of the data centralized in one entity will enable mass invasive surveillance and profile, right, as you may imagine, right? And also enable, there's a risk of a secondhand data misuse, right? We have discussed before. And most importantly, for healthcare domain, right? The data is heavily regulated, right? So it's by law, you actually cannot freely move data, share data across some boundary, institutional boundary, not to mention the, the national boundary. Federated learning comes to rescue, right? So federated learning is a distributed learning paradigm. It allows, the multiple participants to jointly train a global model. And for federated learning, the parameter server, this is a centralized server, right? So it will, with the initial, the model, and then push the model to all the participants. Then the participants will use your local data sets to train a local model and send the model updates to the server, right? So in this case, they can keep their raw data local without actually sharing to the central server. So in this sense, federated learning is considered a privacy-preserving learning paradigm, right? However, so there's some platforms and applications for federated learning, right? So, however, I think there's recent research have already demonstrated that even federated learning is vulnerable to some privacy attacks, right? So because federated learning, the global server and the client actually will need to exchange the model updates, right? So the question is, can you infer or extract information from those model updates? So I want to just briefly introduce some of the privacy attacks, member inference attack, and a model inversion attack. And the member inference attack is a specific attack which basically aims to infer whether a specific data point was part of local data sets. So if you know example, then you want to test whether this is in a particular data sets, then you can use a model inference attack. So there's a different model inference attack is heavily, the researched area. So I'm not going to talk more about that. It can be done very, successfully. And what I want to talk about is a model inversion attack, right? So the model inversion attack is a more powerful privacy attack. So in model inversion attack, the attacker's goal basically is to reconstruct or approximate the participant input data. So the goal is to recover the input data, because this is what you want to hide from, right? So the threat model, so what attacker need to know is the model updates, right? The participants' model updates. And also for this attack, the attacker need to have some control over the global model. So typically this is attacker is basically the parameter server, the server, right? The server, by looking at the model updates and also have the control of the global model, is trying to recover the input data. Right, so this is completely defeat the purpose of federated learning for protect the individual users' data privacy. All right, so there are multiple model inversion attacks. I just show you two examples to give you a sense of what is the state-of-art model inversion attack. Right, so MedLeak is one attack which basically leverage using the model crafting method. So the key idea is to insert two linear layer attack module here at the front of the original model. So if this is a global model, the original model, then they need to insert two linear layers with crafted parameters. And then when this model is pushed to the client do the local training. In the returned updates from the gradient of these two linear layers, then the attacker can accurately reconstruct the original data if the attacker has the individual model updates. All right. So this is based on the technique called linear leakage, right? So then you may say, oh, there's actually secure aggregation schemes to defend against this type of attack, because the secure aggregation is a cryptographical method which basically to mask the individual model updates, adding random like the noises so that individual model updates is hidden, right? So the server will receive masked individual model updates, then they won't be able to recover, right? So, but with this secure aggregation, the sum, this mask is a zero sum. When you add them together, aggregate them together, then the sum, this mask, random mask, will cancel each other, right? So you still got the original aggregated results, right? So this attack actually works on the aggregated results. So if this is an aggregated results with these two linear layers, then they can recover all the input, all right? And if you want to attribute a input, if you want to focus on particular, particular client, right? So you can also leverage some techniques called zero gradients. So just the target, your victim will use a linear leakage module, and the other non-target client will have the zero gradient. Then zero gradient method will force sort of a gradient to be all zero, and then when you recover, then you recover all those target, the client's input. All right, so this is the mad leak attack, and here is just give you a sense of the reconstruction examples. So you can see the examples can be recovered very accurately with a very high successful rate. In this case, it's only like 2 is not recovered. And this applies to not only the image data sets, but also the abstract data sets. All right, so this attack will be presented at CHASE 2005, and after this session, right after this afternoon session. So you're welcome to join this session. And the second attack, so if you look at the previous attack, you perhaps realize, you need to add 2 linear layers at the front. This doesn't naturally exist there. So then the client will start to suspect, then it's easier to detect such attack. So in the scale mirror attack, we basically developed a model inversion attack without changing the model architecture. The idea is to leverage the existing linear layers in the model. So if you have a machine learning model which consists of 2 linear layers, any 2 linear layers. So in our LP layers, you typically have multiple linear layers. This is what we leverage, right? And then we take this whatever before this as a encoder, let's call it encoder, right? And then we develop, we can craft the model with this same encoder structure, but with craft the parameters, and these 2 linear layers, just take these 2 linears in the existing model architecture and craft the parameters, right? And then we can send this crafted model. And remember, this model has exactly the same architecture as the original model, so that the client is less suspicious from the client point of view, right? And then the client can do the regular training and then send the aggregated results regardless they have the secure aggregation schemes applied. And as long as we have the aggregated, the model updates, and we can do a 2-step reconstruction. First, use a linear leakage module to reconstruct from the gradients of these 2 linear layers to reconstruct the latent space representation. And then from the latent space representation goes through the corresponding decoder we build, then we can reconstruct the input data, right? This also applies to, we can directly reconstruct all the input, right? So We did try them on multiple data sets on different type of, the model architectures. And this is, if you see, there's a original image and a reconstructed image. You can see that we can achieve very high reconstruction rate and with very high, the accuracy, PSNR. And most importantly, this is very efficient, right? Because it only requires inference. So here are more examples, right, from a bigger batch of the input and for the some healthcare-related data sets. And so for the comparison, you can see those are the previous, the early optimization-based model inversion attack, which is typically very expensive, right? Because you do the optimization, a lot of trial and errors, and it only applies to a very small number of the input data. When you have a large number of the input data, then it cannot handle that. But the newer development, just in a couple of years with linear leakage module, then the efficiency becomes very high. You can quickly recover the message, recover the input, and also we can recover a large batch size, right? But linear leakage module requires a change of the architecture, but our new skill-mere attack does not even need to change the architecture, right? So yeah, this paper is published also this year at NDISS. And so we have the artifact, the source code, everything reproducible. And you can find that from the paper's link. And this is the model we actually provided in the artifact example. Much time do I have? Okay. So I think as a defense, right? So there's a traditional privacy enhancing technology. If you care about this, you perhaps have heard about those technologies: homomorphic encryption, secure multi-party computation, and differential privacy, and TEE-based confidential computing, right? Each of them has their strengths and has their weaknesses. This is very computationally intensive, and perhaps it's not really still not practical because it supports very limited complex operation, and this is actually already be defeated by our, attack, skill-mere attack, right? Differential privacy similarly. If you add the noise, but it's zero sum, when you cancel each other at the aggregated results, then we can recover, right? So it's not very effective. And TEE is basically required hardware support, right? So I think I'm running out of time. I think the conclusion is that for machine learning, we perhaps need fundamentally new approaches to protect the user data privacy. And finally, what is trustworthy machine learning? We all talk about trustworthy machine learning, but what trustworthy means for machine learning, right? So I think first thought is, we talk about the reliability, robustness, and fairness. We want the model to perform as expected, right? And in fact, for trusted computing, it follows kind of this type of definition, perform as expected, do what you are supposed to do. But I think as machine learning is so dynamic, right? And the behavior of machine learning, machine learning can also do a lot of different things, even unexpected. So I think the other aspect of trustworthiness is to make sure that machine learning models cannot be abused. So machine learning models should be resistant to a number of secure and privacy attacks, right? So privacy, I already mentioned the data privacy, member inference, and model inversion, right? So there's also model privacy attacks, because for machine learning, the model itself is intellectual property. You have to protect the machine learning model itself, right? So there's a well-known model stealing attack, and even for the open source machine learning model, you also need to have the protection for its copyright, right? So because there's not copyright, they're intellectual property, right? So, and there's also security attacks to the machine learning, which generally apply to many machine learning models. There's a data model poisoning attack, backdoor attacks and also the jailbreak attacks, which attacks the safety alignment for the machine learning models. So those are all very important, the known attacks that I think we need to consider when we talk about trustworthy machine learning, right? So I think that's all for my talk. Thank you.
I'm sure you are like me. Really enjoy the talks. So much information too. Yeah, so we are running out of time. But my proposal is that let's have another 10 minutes for open discussions, question answers. How about that? Yeah. So I would thank you. Sorry about my bad timing. So I would invite all the panelists to get on stage. So then we can have we have a microphone here, so we can have question, answers, and comments. Your open floor discussions. Yeah, please. Thank you. So, any questions for the panelists? So, time is precious. 10 minutes.
I have a question about the explainability and interpretability topic. Since it's nowadays there's like I think related to a healthcare foundation model, there are at least like two main approach to achieve interpretability. One is the one is the physics informed neural network, usually operating in some like a state space of the model. For example, if you have a biosignal or two biosignals of different organs that's synchronously recorded, we can relate the model between the two models through some like a shared embedding space. But another one is that people are trying to use a language model for reasoning of medical terms or maybe something physical in the medical case, but interpretation of the language model usually it's easier to do it through the reasoning steps or chain of thought. But if we want to do this kind of explanation, we have to do it before the model layers, and usually in the encoding space, not the embedding space, because if there are some we tried some like different models. If you do it directly on the embedding space, then you cannot reason because it's after the reasoning step. Is there some recommendations or maybe prediction of what the future of this problem will be like? Thank you.
Yeah. So the question is about how to make LLMs more interpretable. Yeah. So I guess that is not the in the expertise or strengths of us. So, but I believe when you explain your question, you already provided a lot of like a background, and it's an important problem, and what are the existing solutions. So you already answered a large part of the question, right? So
I mean, how to combine them, because since Professor, I think you talk about the symbolic AI and the reasoning of the language AI, but also the interior structure, how to explain the interior structure of AI, and I just wonder, like, will these two go together in the future? So, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that none of us we are working on this kind of problem. So yeah.
We're not expert on explainable AI, but I do look forward to the new development in explainable AI and trying to find the vulnerabilities in that. And I think in our security research, we also use results from explainable AI to help us understand, the security vulnerabilities. So I actually will, if you work on explainable AI, I will be look forward to your contribution and see what we can do with that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you.
Sure, we can.
Really out of our expertise.
Yeah, more discussions offline. Yeah. So, go ahead. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So, do you think AI is conscious? I mean, the last that I read from onset, it was if AI is conscious or it's gonna be conscious. So, what do you think? Because
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely no chance.
Yeah. That's a good
It can
question for you.
simulate consciousness and certain aspects of consciousness, but it obviously has no relationship to either human or animal consciousness, which we think we can detect in our pets and sometimes in other ethological, interesting experiments, but no. Well,
even for these new generative models, which they are very smart, you think they don't have consciousness. They are just computation, right?
Yeah.
And they're distributed. I think the whole distribution issue is, means there's no similarity to embodied living beings.
So I think I asked the same question just for kicks to ChatGPT, and its answer is like, no way. But I think really also depends on your definition of consciousness. And there are lots of fictional writers who have talked about how potentially in the far future, right, these complex machinery could obtain consciousness of some sort. But as far as what we have now, it's not consciousness.
Great for science fiction, but nothing else.
I don't know, some students, when they write a top conference paper, they will ask, can this paper be accepted? Then we'll ask LLM. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for all your great presentations. It's thought-provoking. I have multiple questions, but in the interest of time, I have one for Fred, if I can see him. So in the end of your talk, right, I'm so glad you mentioned for the AI therapist part. So that's the scope of my question. So in the end, you mentioned that one of the limitations is mental health patients are the least motivated to even respond, right? There's even more to that because engagement is a huge issue for all of the amazing interventions to even work because they just don't do that. So I also learned from my collaborators in psychiatry and behavioral science that the biggest struggle is patients don't do the homework at home, right? Because you cannot just keep going to the therapist. It's just a temporary relief. But in order to really be happy, it's kind of like a skill. You got to work on it yourself. You got to spend time to change your behaviors, and you need to do the work. But how do you motivate people to do the work? So there's just so much to it. I'm just wondering your vision in this whole line of work. Imagine a world where the majority of people are happy, even at the airport. Like people are smiling at the airport. What do you think are the critical steps that need to happen to reach there?
So first of all, thank you for the question. So yes, I think getting people to sort of respond to you, to interact with you by itself is challenging. And we thought about a few different ways, right? Well, first of all, this is a good case for continuous interaction at home instead of, let's say, you visit your psychiatrist once every month, right? Having the ability to, let's say, constantly at home be able to chat when you feel depressed is by itself already advancement from having to visit the office. But I think the question of how do you get the person to even respond to you, one potential solution, or not a complete solution, but is how do you phrase your question, right? If you can, so in our kind of study, there is this component of personalization. How do I, based on some historical conversation with you, be able to come up with a way to get you to talk to me let's say, ease you into the actual topic, right? So I think as we leverage more powerful models, right, we can actually build this ability to construct essentially a way to coerce you to talk to me, even if the first question is not related to the actual question I'm trying to ask. So I guess this could fall under personalization. That's, I guess, one way to do it, right? And the other one is using smart home devices in some way. I talked about how if someone is completely unresponsive, I can simply drive a robotic vacuum to him and start observing him. I could imagining these home drones can not only observe the person, but actually perform some sort of action, play some kind of music or do something that try to get his attention. So yeah, I think these are many different ways we can try to do it. See how it goes.
There's a related field called effective computing. Please.
Hi, sorry, Fred. This question is also for you. I'm Emmanuel. It's actually a kind of related question. You talked of getting all these models on devices, the AI models, you're getting them to work on, drones, on vacuum cleaners, blah, blah, blah. My question to you is, how far have you gotten to making them work offline? Picture the drone. If it's flying 7,000 whatever feet in the air and there's no wireless, have you gotten a model small enough to work? Can it fully operate without, there's an AI model on the device, but the device is not online, but the AI model is still working. Have you managed to cross that barrier?
So thank you for the question. The short answer is yes. We are
nice.
in fact doing a lot of these. So we're using. So our lab have two different drones. One is a micro drone, which is about this big. The other one is a outdoor drone that's much larger. On the outdoor drone version, we are putting in these NVIDIA Orange and stuff, right? And on that, we are able to run a lot of the quantized versions of these models. So I guess we can certainly run some version of these models. You can run it on your laptop, right? So having said that, it does not, if the drone is completely offline, then it does not have the ability to, let's say, reach out to the cloud for additional contextual information. So that is hard limitation. But in terms of just computing ability, right, I think we are at the point where you can run lots of models, even though those are sort of the quantized version of those models.
So do you have it? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Just to add here that that's not actually, this problem is not restricted to healthcare. So in NASA, for example, when we run something with satellites, so we observe, yes, we would like to have most of their models to be run offline and then only something on board, okay? So therefore, there's a lot of interest in trying to do pre-training offline and do the minimum online. So it's the general paradigm. And that's why all the pre-training and transfer learning ideas are so important, and they're not restricted to healthcare domain. So it's much more general topic.
General, yeah, question. Yeah. So go ahead. Yeah.
I have a security question to Dr. Lu. Thank you for your research today. Today you talk about the research, the raw data you use is image, right? I guess the image is very unique data set. My question is, I have a similar idea for the security and the noise is like the differential based the method. But the data set I focus on is the statistic data. For example, it's like a tumor size, right? For example, it's a 5.2 centimeters. If you change like 10%, it could add a couple of hundreds patients, similar patients. So you think for the statistic data sets, this scenario, the differential method could work, can prevent attack or re-identification?
Yeah, I think what I presented actually is an attack, right? So the attack, for this attack, if we use the first model, use if you are allowed to add the 2 linear layers, the reconstruction is accurate reconstruction because it's a mathematical model. And so you are talking about differential privacy. That is a defense mechanism. You're adding some statistical noise to the samples, so to secure against the member inference attack. So for member inference attack, if you use a differential privacy, it's still okay, still good. So what I present is a model inversion to reconstruct the whole input data sets. So the second method, because we also use machine learning method to reconstruct, so it's not an accurate reconstruction. It's a approximation. So using differential, we actually showed in our paper, using differential privacy is not effective secure against this model inversion attack, because adding differential privacy is also zero sum kind of, yes. Right? It depends on the noise you add. If you add too much noise, you get, our reconstruction is worse. But if you add a smaller noise, and then when they cancel each other, then the remaining, I think, noise is very small, then we can actually reconstruct.
Yes, exactly. My idea is create a, I call it a balance controller. Mm-hmm. It's depend on the downstream task. Mm-hmm. If the machine learning task need very high level or high accurate, we just add a very less noise. And mm-hmm. it totally depends on the controller. But mm-hmm. right now, my idea is totally predefined by human being. I hope that in the future, or my research future is can define the based on the large language model. Is automatically defined.
Right, okay, yeah. Because I think the point I present the attack is that we need to be aware what attackers' capability, like a privacy attack, secure attack, what attackers' capability to infer or reconstruct your sensitive data. Because the federated learning plus your differential privacy plus secure multi-party computation is proposed to protect the user data privacy. So you get the false image of, my data, as long as I add those, the privacy enhancing technology, we're safe. You won't be able to learn my information, right? So your privacy is protected. What we did is trying to show you that's not enough, or some of the mechanism is not enough, right? You need to be aware of those of attack, and if you understand the core reason that those attack is successful, then you can develop your system to avoid those attack to be successful in your system.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's a good time to close this panel. So yeah, let's thank our panelists again. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.